Hey, I'm Di Foster and welcome to Accidental Business Owners on our channel Business in Between. Good morning, boys. How are we?
Hey, Di, good. How are you?
Great. He's sounding a bit eager.
Shouting.
Yeah, like actually shouting.
He's excited.
Yeah. What are you excited about?
Talking about the decision we've made.
God, he can't even pace, can he?
And there's no tease in this man.
There's no
tease in this man. If I've learned anything over the last 5 years, the art of the tease is not here. What's decision we've come to?
yeah, I don't even know how to start with that. It's like, right, straight into it. What decision have we... How are you this morning, Seamus?
I'm good. Big week.
Yeah.
Big 2 weeks. So we had the 5-year live a little while ago, and then we went into our planning for 2025, and all in the space of a week.
Yeah.
It's been a lot, and then we threw in a record. I personally did 3 keynotes, and I got a couple of other things on the horizon as well. So she's been a big old 14 days.
Do you feel like you're on the countdown to the end of the year?
Yes, and I've made a joke about other people, like, have you put it in neutral yet and rolling through to Christmas? And it's like, that seems so far away for us to just get to a point where we can down tools and relax.
But it is still November.
Yeah, so. it is still November. We're about a month away from Christmas now, but I still see there's a lot for us to do between now and end of 24.
Yeah.
And then after our glance to 25, there's a hell of a lot to do for 25 as well.
What do you reckon, Steve? What's top of mind for you?
I've listened to Shay say, yeah, it's been a lot on, like it's been such a busy week for, I reckon, the last 4 months. And as he's saying it, I'm thinking the same thing, but I've also accepted that is the normal now. And I think a lot of what we spoke about yesterday is kind of growing up a little bit and not just always saying, oh, I'm so hectic and busy and so much going on, and actually figuring out plans to not always have that answer. And so, I think that kind of leads into what we're talking about today, right?
Yeah, it does. Just on that point, though, I'd have to say that absolutely warms my heart. You know, just that point you just made is like, how do we step out of the busy and into being, much more... Yeah, it is going to always be quite full on, but how do we sort of step out of that and make it happen, which I really like. That kind of warms my heart, because I'd have to say, on reflection of this year, especially, I had this moment yesterday when I looked at Seamus and I was telling him how big my 5 months had been, and then he said, yeah, it has been really big, and I looked at him and went, oh yeah, it's been big for you too. I literally felt like I was going along in my own little world, and so I think you're right. I think it is the normal, so to speak. So yesterday we had, what did we call it? We had a...
Strategic.
Yeah, we did. That's exact. Yeah, strategic. So you might have heard...
I mean, we called it a long lunch, but you went and changed it into some sort of a business thing.
That's exactly right. The boys had organised a long lunch with 2 of the other staff, or 2 of the other... What do we call them?
Ecosystems.
Teams. Yeah, 2 of the other team. And then I was invited to this long lunch, and I said, yeah, I'm actually going to make the effort to come. I'll be in Auckland. That'll be great. And then as we got closer to it, I was like, I can't imagine why we would have lunch and celebrate without having some golden time together to think about the business and where we're going and all of that. Because I feel like you have grown quite quickly, and I feel like you have added not only just with Between Two Beers, but you've added these other streams to the business. And I think one of the things we've talked about, Steve, is that this time last year there was 45,000 ideas. We got them down to about 5, 6 or 7 this year, and it was still felt a lot. Is that about right?
Yep.
So I stole the long lunch and we made it dinner, and we put a strategic sort of half day in place. And as we got closer to the time, Maddie Hinton and I realised that we actually needed it with just the 4 of us so that we could really have some robust conversations. I'm not sure I was prepared for the robustness of the conversations and where it went, but where do we want to start with yesterday? Like, on reflection, how did you feel about your long lunch being taken over and a strategic day being popped in?
I think the first thing, we probably needed a long day.
Yeah.
It was awesome. And you're right, like thinking really critically about what we were doing and how we were doing it, but also having you two as some kind of sounding boards in there. But it was a kind of shift in energy, I think, for Stephen and I to, really think about what we were doing. And I guess he makes the point about like being busy, and that was the grenade almost that I rolled in, was an acknowledgement of the fact that our weeks are busy. And I was thinking about it in the moment about, is this actually sustainable? Is it sustainable to be putting the outputs that we're putting out, but also looking at what we were thinking and planning on doing for the next 12 months and being like, can we add those things in and still maintain what we were doing? So my suggestion yesterday was around wrapping up this channel, or taking the best parts of it and putting it into something that was working really well, which is on our main channel, Between Two Beers. So I kind of threw it out as an idea, not really knowing if it would, not with a end decision in mind, but more a talking point. And then the group kind of latched on it and we kicked it around, right?
Yeah, I think what we did is we laid out all the things going on, right? So we got the Between Two Beers podcast, and we had the BIB channel, and we had reflections, and we had speakers, and we had us doing our own sort of keynotes. And I think the discussion was, well, that's a lot. If we were to narrow it down, what would we lose? And we sort of went through, and we loved all of these things. But I think we sort of went through, we're not losing the podcast. I love reflections, speaking business. So it's like, well, what about BIB? What about this channel? We're putting a lot of our time and resource into it, and we started thinking about ways that we could get some time back and keep the best parts of it. So the reason that we set up Business in Between in the first place was we are podcasters. We have a talent for building an audience, and we thought we could do it in the business space, and we thought we could tell our story and interview interesting business leaders. But as the year has developed, we've found out that the long-form interviews we do on Business in Between, they actually belong on the main channel anyway, because they're really good, and that storytelling of these epic tales. And it's like, you can't really take the personal away from the business and just make it business, because it's all connected. And then we've got this Accidental Business Owners show, which I love, which obviously we're doing right now, and I wanted to keep that. And so we were talking about, well, why can't we just keep it but move it onto the main channel? We've got ambassadors there every fortnight. We do ABO every fortnight. We keep the best of the business channel. We still interview the most epic business people we can find, but as a main episode, and we get a shitload of time back, because for every episode we release, there's an intro to be written, and there's a listen back, and there's edits to be made, and there's social media and marketing to go with it. And it's just a lot. So it's kind of like we just had to make the decision that a sacrifice needed to be made. Business in Between was always like a long-term play, and it was like, yeah, it's going to take a while to build an audience and build community and take it to the live arena. There's still options to do that, I think, with accidental business owners, but it kind of just like, it was quite an emotional decision, wasn't it, Di? There's a real mixture of emotions, because it has been, Business Channel has been our baby, and it has been something I've been excited to grow, and we've poured so much time into it, but it also just felt like the right decision to cut it.
Yeah, and I feel like we've just raced ahead to some of the critical points in it, and I think if we wind it back a little bit, originally, Business in Between had an entire life of its own. The idea was that it was going to be a much bigger platform. There was possibly a course in education, and we were wanting to build a community around that business space. And I think one of the things that has become quite clear as we've gone is, what is the best bits of it? So it's all very well to have an intention. And I think the other part of the story is that when did you first come up with the idea of Business in Between?
It was Sarah at NZME.
Yep.
She came up with the idea, and she said, basically what I said, you guys have the ability to build another channel.
And when was that?
Start of the year.
Yeah, so it's been a year in the making, and then halfway through the year we started this wee series called Accidental Business Owners. So I think that in the conversation yesterday, what I noticed is it's almost like there's a growing up as you said, Steve, there's a sort of maturity about the conversation yesterday around, well, apparently we can't do everything. Do you know what I mean? It's like we have some limited resources and we don't have an endless amount of money. And also it's kind of like what would be best for the best bits of what you've done so far. So taking the best bits and still finding a home for it, but then sort of, which did actually sort of kill off the main idea, but sort of transferred it back into, what I would call your main product.
Yeah, and if we sort of cut to the shit as well, like we didn't get a sponsor for the channel.
Yeah.
We had grown a good audience. We had grown a sponsorable audience. We had 10,000 downloads a month, which is more than a lot of podcasts. But we'd been out on market, and I think this kind of speaks to it. Like we hadn't done a good job of trying to sell the show because we didn't have time to, because we were doing the show, which I think is kind of the big thing. Is like, fuck. What's the most valuable way to spend our time is like making our sales pitches better and actually getting out there and selling the product. But we didn't have time to do it because we were spending all that time doing the thing.
Yeah, I think I had that conversation on Thursday morning with someone. They're like, oh man, everything's going really good. It looks really great. And I was like, yeah, it does. And we're really good at doing the stuff that's really good, but we're learning how to run a business at the same time. And the two of those, in terms of like time expenditure, they're almost mutually exclusive. And I think that was a part of yesterday. And I tried not to show any emotion during the conversation, and because I was really deliberately trying to be objective about taking a step back and looking at what everything was there, and then parking ego and all that other stuff. But then when the reaction was quite an emotive reaction from within the room, I felt quite bad about it, but also there was like a sense of relief, I think, of thinking about the time that frees up to allow us to maximize the things that are going really well. And I don't know whether that's like a business lesson about if you've got a product within your range of things that you offer that is lagging. Sometimes it is. You have to make a hard decision, right, about cutting that free and focusing on the 1, 2, 3 things that you're doing really well.
Well, what I would say is that when you're saying yes to something, you're saying no to something else. And I think without mansplaining it or telling you how to suck eggs, but even like reflecting on it for myself, is that what we were doing is we were weighing up very clearly. I think what we had on our mind without saying it is that we have limited resources in you both. And I think that is the very real reality of the type of product that you have in your particular style of business. So when there's an entirely new channel that needs all of your energy and, your time in order to produce it, as you say, you're so busy making the product, you're forgetting to sell it or to pitch it in the right way. But even I would go back a step further than that. And I would say that the channel itself had evolved, and we hadn't necessarily stepped back and said, hold on a minute, what are we trying to do here? Like, who is our market and who are we pitching to, and why would it be of benefit? And I think the other thing that was on my mind without actually, because we didn't necessarily... We talk a lot between the three of us, and so sometimes when we have those meetings like yesterday, there's a lot that's unsaid behind the scenes. But our idea with it, I was thinking, I knew that a lot of it I would have to lead because it's in that very direct business space. And also when we talk about education and community and things like that, I was like, that's big. I know what I bring to the table, and it isn't necessarily really formula-driven frameworks, and it's not all tick the boxes, here's how to run a business. It's kind of much more about the people and in the business. So I feel like even though we didn't necessarily sort of really granularly talk about it yesterday, we're really playing to and the decision is absolutely playing to all of our strengths.
So to be really clear, because I don't think we've said it, we are killing business in between, but we're saving accidental business owners. Accidental business owners is coming with us to the main channel, and we're talking about what that actually looks like. And it's kind of, we've got ambassadors, which is behind the scenes talking about all the stuff that's going on in our lives and, taking the listeners in and building that community. And accidental business owners is going to be the reality of everything that's going on. And I think we use the cake and the icing analogy where this is the cake, ABO is the cake. And I'm excited to talk about growing up, not in this episode, over in the main show, because there's been a lot.
I think the other thing as well is by making this choice, I think we get the best of Di Foster. And we've, for me, I think we've had a glimpse of it. And those little moments are really, really powerful. But, with all due respect, sometimes we just got caught up in the doing and the planning of how we could grow this thing. And selfishly for us, by having you coaching us, as well as creating content with us, but really focused in coaching us, I think we'll be far better for it in the immediate short term. Who knows what the future, it could be resurrected at any moment, but I think for the here and now, it's time for us to really double down and be better business owners.
Yeah, I think it's something that kept popping out of my mouth recently, isn't it? You're not getting the best of me. And I think there was a frustration there from my part in that sometimes I get on with business owners so well that I end up with, there's only been a couple of situations, which I was happy with at the time, but I end up being a little bit more intricate in their business. And then it's like, actually, maybe it's just a little bit of a time for all of us to grow up. And I think that was the sort of realization for me yesterday, was that actually, let's be honest, it was me that cried yesterday. The boys didn't, I did. And I think they were looking at each other going, oh my God, we made her cry. And I reflected on the fact that I haven't cried at work for a long time. But I think that actually, because Maddie came and had a chat to me, because I was just like, I just need to get out of this room. It was also about 110 degrees in that room.
You were running hot.
These boys do not understand that I'm going through perimenopause, and that was like a sauna. They're trying to have a meeting with me in a sauna. One thing I don't know if you noticed, but when we were talking about it, I very clearly would say, as an advisor, I think this is a great idea, because I was very, very clear that in that moment I was advising Between Two Bears Empire. That's what we were there to do. So that's what I was advising on. And then all of a sudden there was like this well of, I just need to go and cry. They're taking my baby away.
And that's what it felt like.
Yeah.
And that's why, the point I tried to make before was like, same thing, trying to be really objective about what's best for us.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's going to be anyone listening that is going to be like, oh, fuck.
Yeah, I was actually just thinking.
Business in between is getting canned. Yeah. Like what I'm really proud of what we've built, but at the same time, like, it's kind of like this weird thing. Like, is it Between Two Bears? Like, they're releasing the best episodes on the main channel anyway. We're still keeping ABO. Like, people love ABO, and we're keeping that. So it's just like it. I had a really reflective night, and I was waking up this morning not really sure how I felt. But after coffee, it makes so much sense. Like, there's no sadness involved. I don't think the listeners are gonna give a shit. It's like
I was actually thinking as we started, I was like, this feels really somber. This whole mood of the chat. It's like, but it is exciting. We keep the best part of what we were doing, what we've worked on, and we continue it forward on a bigger platform.
Yeah,
it's like in terms of a business decision, it's a no-brainer, right?
Yeah.
So, I guess let's say the final words on the Business in Between channel.
I haven't finished yet.
Yeah.
You just calm the phone.
Done it again. Try to take over.
Don't you take over just yet. How did you feel about the process yesterday in terms of how we did that? Like the process of making the decision.
I loved it. Having trusted external resources in the room to help and ask questions, I thought was really good.
So just to recap for a moment, Maddie and I had talked about it beforehand. We'd set an agenda. We didn't share it with you guys. I set some homework, which both of you came along with beautifully. And then at the last minute, Maddie said to me, who's going to facilitate it? Like, who's actually going to run it? And I was so grateful, like, especially retrospectively, so grateful that he said, I think I should. And so I got to sit in the meeting along with you guys and not facilitate it, and because it's such a different job doing that. So I was really grateful for that part. So you were happy with the process and how it went?
Yeah, I mean, we acted quite decisively and quickly. I think once it sort of became clear all the reasons we've talked about, it's like, well, why deliberate? Like, let's just make the call.
How do we feel about, the fact that, you started something and, like it's going to be no longer?
I actually like it.
Why?
Because you got to fail at thing. Like, would I classify it as a failure? I'm not sure.
That was a great catch.
Yeah. We're refining what we're doing. Up until now, we had just been growing in lots of different directions. And I knew there was going to come a point where some stuff was going to have to get trimmed because it was too much. And we knew that. And that's I think the point of the meeting yesterday is figuring out what to focus on.
Yeah.
So process
job done.
worked.
Yeah. And I think that if we go back to that point that when you're saying yes to something, you're definitely saying no to something else. In the last, week, with on the back of the 5 years celebration, that sort of thing, what do you, in terms of success and not necessarily, I don't even like that success and failure, but in terms of learnings, what do you reckon might have been your biggest learning from the last 10 days?
For me, and this is probably recency bias, but it is protecting that energy, protecting your energy in terms of your outputs. And not loading your days up too much. Like even if I think about the 5th birthday day, we had a speakers workshop in the morning, and then racing across town and trying to get to the live show. And
it was actually in the afternoon. It wasn't even in the morning.
Yeah, true.
It was after lunch.
Yeah, and I think just for my own, reflecting on it for my own preparation, that ain't setting me up to succeed.
Yeah.
And I've thought about it in terms of other stuff that I've done in terms of commentary where I've done something and then I felt like I haven't quite nailed it. It's when I haven't set myself up to win.
Yeah, so setting ourselves up to win, I think, is a really interesting reflection. Because if we go back to, business in between, it's it has evolved, and so I don't think there was any sort of one point where we went, actually, this is what it is, and this is what we're doing. It was like we allowed it to evolve, which is not a problem. It's just a great reflection, as you say, to go, actually, whoa, lot going on. What does next year look like? And then double down on that. What's your reflection, Steve, on the last 10 days?
I think we talk a lot about community and building it, but I don't know if we'd really done a good job. We certainly hadn't done anything in the live space, and so that whole day on Thursday, bringing our speakers together and then having all of our friends and former guests at the show really brought it to life. And I was, I think, quite overwhelmed the next morning that we had done it. Because we'd talked a lot about it, and we've got this big online community, and we've got listeners, and we get feedback on all of our episodes, but it's different to actually make people come to a space that you're in. So I think my biggest thing is excitement about that. I love the thought of doing lots more of that next year and using the platform to bring epic people together and share experiences and build and grow.
Nice. My biggest reflection on the last 10 days is around team. Just seeing Kerry come in and just ever so slightly coming into her element, but just super excited about really seeing her come into her element next year and what she brings to the table for you guys.
Kerry's a legend. Yep, same. Same. But we had a dinner last night, and it was, the Between Two Beers family, and it was cool, and it's a great group of people. And
got another terminology. We've got empire, I say universe, family, ecosystem. I think we've got to nail it for 25.
Okay.
The B2B, whatever, insert collective group of people.
I'll let you work on that.
Yeah.
Can we shut the channel down now?
Okay, let's go. So we're done. So just recapping, Business in Between as a channel, gone burger.
Yeah.
Accidental Business Owners as a series.
Catch it on the Between Two Beers channel. Thank you, everyone that has joined us to this point. The channel will stay, so you can go back and listen to all the ABOs and the epic interviews we've done. But yeah.
If you want to hear future episodes, you'll be catching us on the main channel.
We'll see you there in 25.
See you there in 25.
See you there in 25. Thanks, everyone. Love you.